her experiences she's had over the years. So you know a lot about this technology and the EMF signals, and what I was trying to find out, again, like how this basically works, is that some research that I did is it uses EMF and microwave technology, and they use computers and satellites to beam this with implants, and that you're saying it's pretty easy to do. And I looked this up. It says, you know, our human brain runs at 5 kilobits per second, and we've got supercomputers that can outpace that. So it's probably easy to map and decode and send things directly to the brain, because we've got technology kind of surpasses our own brain.
Well, their technology, it depends, though. I don't know if I agree with that, because some of it, because I believe our brains work faster than that. And I know that mine actually works pretty quick. So I will say we're more than compatible with machines. And secondly, yes, there's the microwave transmission of signal where they can actually interfere with people. With the old-fashioned version was voice to skull through Gwen towers and this and that. But the modern technologies that they're using, the more black technologies, are more satellite-driven, more with supercomputer design work, and also with signals. And when they implant people, it's through a signal transmission. Some people get the RFID, but that's old school.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a signal, and it's going to be an array system. But yeah, they take your brain template, your EEG. They do what we call EEG cloning and heterodyning, and that literally is a mixing of signals so that they can actually overlay a brainwave, whether it's an artificial brain from a computer, onto the target to create a possible schizophrenic brainwave pattern, or maybe ramp them up psychologically or psychically. They can do all sorts of things to integrate whether they want to ramp them up or down, and that's a very popular technique used by old CIA and some other covert divisions. But they've really, what I would say, they've mastered a lot of this technology to the point where it's all getting synced up with people with hive collectives now, and they're really using it in the underground.
It's all just, again, like we were watching your DVD with all the, you're talking about all the stuff that you've had done to you, and that it was a constant 7 years, you said, of this bombardment. How in the world did you survive?
How did you?
I didn't survive. I barely survived. The thing is, I kept fighting my way out of it. But the problem with the technology is that it integrates in and it overlays onto you. So it kind of braids into your neural circuits. It's a signal that it makes you a hybrid. That's the bottom line. So what I did was I lost everything. I think y'all know that I lost my husband in 4 months' time because he didn't know what was happening to me. He thought I was being drugged by my doctor, and I was speaking with the natural telepathy and the synthetic telepathy with my handler live feed real time. And the one thing they want you to do when they pull you into these projects and they induct you is they want you isolated. They want you away from anybody who can get you back to where you're supposed to be. So they'll pull you away and then they'll keep you isolated so they can program you. And that's exactly what they did to me when I went to Maui. That was the place where they said, go to a place of your choosing where I can get to you. And that was Neil and Michael. And that's where I went. And sure enough, he showed up. So that's the whole idea behind that project, is to isolate you. But it was very hard. I stayed spiritual, and I trained, and I kept my martial arts going, and I wrote about it. And then I started writing more and talking about it, and that was kind of facilitating more of the healing and also allowing me to have a voice, because they'll try to take your voice away, especially if you're communicating the truth. If you want to go out there and disclose this technology, they don't want you doing that. And the only reason I disclosed it was because I was being tortured with it. I had no choice. So I had to come.
So by shedding the light on you, did it push those people away from you?
Well, you mean the parties involved, like the band?
Well, not necessarily the band, but I mean, since you kind of like started bringing the subject matter to light, do you? I guess, does it continue today? I mean, I know you say in your video that it's been infused into you.
Right. Well, I have a signal anomaly that's still there. It's measurable. It's not as strong as it used to be. I do have an inkling, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm 99% sure, equaling 100, that they have access to remotely hack when they need to. They don't. But I know that they can, because anytime I have a signal that's still embedded in me, it's accessible by the people who actually created the signal. So it's there. It's provable. And, I've lived with it to a point where I just kind of blend in with society. Nobody has any idea who I am, what I am, how I've been upgraded, and how I've been interfered with, unless they read my books or they look at my documentary or hear my radio shows. So I'm kind of cloaked.
Oh, wow.
So I know this is probably going to, let's just go for the full Monty here.
Just trying to wrap my head around it.
So you don't feel that maybe you're a Manchurian candidate?
Oh, no, not like that. No, Manchurian, yeah. No, the thing is, they try to push you to a point where they want to break you psychologically and program you into being, whether it's a spy, recruited for their own, for their own division. Manchurian candidate, I think if I have a potential to be violent, that would have been a different scenario, but I'm not. Being a second-degree black belt, we learn control. We're not we don't abuse our power. So I have a moral compass and a really strong benchmark spiritually. And I think that's why they couldn't really get me to be whatever it is they wanted to make me look like, besides a Looney Tune. It just didn't work because I have too much caliber and too much education. And so that doesn't work. But I do know, and I can tell you point blank, that the psychotronic warfare program that they have will affect certain people. If they're weak and they get triangulated and pulled into some of these projects and they run these programs
that's
on
what I wanted to ask you. Is it just people who are, like you or who are naturally maybe clairvoyant, or can they just do this to regular people, or do they have to have, something to get a hook?
Right. Well, the thing is, that everybody has an electrical frequency. They all have the electromagnetic field signature. What I do know is that if they fit a certain profile for something, they will pull them into a project. Now, all these projects are different. There are many tentacles to the beast, as I say. You have the targeted individuals. You've got people like me who are pulled into a covert program for training and recruitment and sci-spy. And then you have other people who are pulled into other various projects for possible mind control, possible Manchurian candidates where they're sitting there and they have multiple programs running, and then all of a sudden they're dormant. Then they get activated and they commit this hellacious crime. I think personally that they were programming me, and at some point they were probably going to figure out, well, we could try to make her look like this or make her look like that. But what they didn't realize is that I'm the controller in this body. I'm the one. It's me, my higher self, my oversoul, my superconscious, and source, and I don't delegate them power at all. And the only time I allowed them to communicate with me is when they opened up the communication live feed real time and wanted to communicate with me. But I had no idea they had an agenda at the time. I wasn't afraid.
Wow.
So let's go back. Can you tell us a little bit how it happened in 2004 and kind of set it up for us, and let's kind of progress through the years and because you have some interesting side posts along the way that have marked your journey to where you're at now.
Right. Well, it seems like a lifetime ago, I'll tell you that much. But back in 2004, I had a normal life. I was married to a land surveyor. I was also a surveyor. I was a map maker. And I was also a martial arts instructor, had doing healing practices with DNA activation, and also a writer. So I had my own life going in the right orbit, so to speak. And then I sent a book, and I'm sure you are familiar that I sent a book to Neil Peart, who is basically the drummer for Rush. Mm-hmm. And that's when everything went chaotic. And I'll tell you point blank, let me back up this truck a little bit here, because I used to have communication with him in the 80s and the 90s. And because people said I used to write like him. And so I tongue-in-cheek sent my work into him through this drum solo contest, and he started responding to me with a postcard. And this communication went back and forth into the 90s. So this is where I kind of had, I wouldn't say rapport, but it was kind of like a pen-pal communication. He knew who I was. He would send me postcards. He didn't seem to have a problem with me. So it wasn't this groupie thing. It was just more of an intellectual thing. So that's how that started. So when I was teaching my martial arts class, and one of my kickboxing students he said that for some reason I think Rush was playing, and he came up and he said, "Oh, I was really sad to hear what happened to his family, and I didn't know." And this is the last family he had that literally was taken out, the tragedy that had happened to them. Well, that's when I felt bad, and I said, well, wow, I guess I could send a book, Transmutation through Ascension. I hadn't written to him in a long time, but I thought my book on healing, transmutation, DNA activation, I thought it was a really nice book to send to him. Mm-hmm. So I did. And within a week's time, I had everything under remotely surveilled. I had live plants in the area. I had my computer accessed. I had my phone tapped. I had people calling my house, my cell phone, with weird kind of cryptic kind of communication. And then I had an interconnection live feed real time with Michael J. Mosbach, Neil Peart, and the band members live feed real time. And if you think they can't do this and they don't have the capabilities, think again. They can, and they did. And let me also explain that Neil Peart has had access to this technology. He uses a synthetic telepathy with Michael J. Mosbach for communication and surveillance. This is the best thing you can use. You don't need a headset. You don't need radios. Mm-hmm. You are the radio. So this is why if people don't believe this stuff, you are the sci-spy. This is why they use it. It works, especially in high-profile people, whether it's for a president, for a Secret Service beyond. To me, it's the MIB technology. This is the stuff that's really cool, but also can be used and misused.
So with Mosbach and the drummer, were they two guys that had this, they were involved in this, and then they just happened to be in a band, or is the band part of the
Oh no, the band's part
agenda?
Of it. The band, yeah, if you look at the Rush albums, if you look at the early days, even Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, you look at their early material, you look at Neil Peart's work and his writing, you will see the signature of signals intelligence everywhere. Mm-hmm. You will see what he's talking about, double agent. Psychotronic warfare is always referenced in a covert way. 2112 album, They talk about the supercomputers. Doesn't anybody pay attention? I mean, not you guys, but I'm trying to tell you, please decode his work and understand. This man is multi-layered. Neil Peart went on live radio a long time ago on YouTube or something and said he was schizophrenic. He's not schizophrenic. If he's schizophrenic, he's been compromised by the program, because what that does is it creates this kind of a multiple personality disorder due to the interface of the technology. If you don't know how to ride the technology properly, it can really make you go crazy. And I can tell you that point blank. But I maintain the stability. And I can also say that Michael J. Mosbach is also the owner of Ashkelon, which is literally a covert agency designed to surveil people, but also induct them into covert technologies, with the same ones he used with me. And he also is contracted with the Middle East. If you look at his background, he was with PCOR, which is also about threat assessment. But what people don't even understand is that when they start to look at a target or somebody they want to pull into their project, they push them technologically and see if they counter. If they counter, then they call them a threat. So I know the ins and outs of Mosbach so well. I know his business better than he does, because he pulled me into something and I busted through the firewall. This is how I know the technology, guys. I learned a lot of it, and then I also knew it by experiencing it, by decoding it.
Would you say that were they? I mean, they were using. I guess come to the point that I'm going to make here. Were they infusing any of this technology through their music?
I believe that it's overlaid and encrypted. And if you look, I think they remixed everything. Now, this is what's interesting. Over the years, if you notice, they've remixed everything, which means if there was a forensic signature, they cleared it up. But I will tell you, yes, back in the early days, they always had an encryption, and they always had it multi-layered. So insofar as the way it can affect people subconsciously, yes, I believe that they were doing this a long time ago. But when they decide to triangulate a target, they can do it. Now, Neil and Michael usually go on their road trips and they ride motorcycles. Neil has a book called Ghost Rider, Masked Rider. People think they don't understand what that means. That means what he's doing through the covert technologies. When they said they were going to pick me up on their motorcycles, they did. They picked me up through the communication system live feed real time, and then they took me on an R30 tour back in 2004. I was literally live feed with those guys, R30 tour. And what's interesting, if you look at the Snakes and Arrows album, and you look at some of the information where it says brought to you by Conniption, that was me. That was him and I in communication live feed real time. We had communication going on, and then they would leave it on their album. And there were things that they were doing back and forth in the R30 Contents Under Pressure book that literally was about my induction and my communication with them. Nobody knows what's going on. And I know this sounds really wild to listeners, but I'm telling you, you have to be a detective about this. And I have no reason to make this crap up, as you know. This is the real deal. This is me decoding the technology, and this is what these guys have been working on and have been involved in. Why they pulled me into it, not really sure on some level, because I'm not going to put up with people who abuse the privilege of having access to covert technologies. That's the bottom line. So I think they picked the wrong person to manipulate.
So they can put something in the music, like in the signal and the frequency of the music, if they wanted to, or
many years. I'm not just saying just Rush alone, but many musicians have embedded things into music to convey messages. I mean, back in the 70s, there was so much. When Paul was supposedly dead, which that's another interesting story altogether. People were playing the albums backwards and hearing Paul is dead, but I was gonna, it's been through a lot of musicians embed secret things in their music, and a lot of interesting things dealing with frequencies alone too. We're looking forward to working on a show here pretty soon on frequencies. Just to let you know,
talk just about frequencies.
But I was gonna bring up from a musician standpoint of view, looking at Rush. I've always found their music complex, but to me, when I would hear or listen or even study some of their music in general, there was a certain, I don't know how to describe it other than a complexity that I can't explain. That in most other music, I can say, oh, this is cut and dry, or this is a little sloppy here, but they're
very precise,
well thought out, and complex. But the complexity that goes beyond natural music theory, and that's what I'm trying to convey.
Unfortunately, I only know Tom Sawyer, and that's the only thing I know about their whole discography. I apologize.
It's the mainstream one. No, that's all right. And you know what? They are multi-layered. There's no doubt. I used to remember and I've only been to 3 Rush concerts. Okay, I mean, in my entire life, and that was before I was inducted. And I can tell you, the one thing that people always say about Pert was, he drums like a machine, he drums like a machine. Yeah, I know why he drums like a machine, because he can interface with the technology, and that'll make you appear like a machine. I know it very clearly because he had me hardwired into him. And it's real interesting, how that works. But he's also known as the professor. He has a real encrypted background. I mean, I don't think people realize that guy has access to a lot of covert technologies with the rest of the band, and he's been doing some interesting programming on people indirectly and sometimes directly, like what he did with me. And I will say also that I'm not the first person they pulled into these programs, but I'm the first one who's come forward. And this is what shocks me, you all, because I honestly don't understand why nobody else has come forward. I don't understand.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to say, I remember seeing a video with Neil. I guess it must have been late 80s, early 90s, and he was talking about his drum setup and then, of course, once again, that complexity of his theory. It was really mind-blowing in the sense of what he does, and I've never seen anybody drum like that, and it's just, in theory-wise, it boggles my mind.
Well, he's hardwired into the technology, the artificial intelligence interface. You want to call it artificial telepathy, that's what it is. He is definitely what I call a hybrid. He is definitely interconnected in the project, and so is Michael. And Michael admitted this to me, by the way, when I met him on Maui in person. And they call it a special hearing. That's the code for it. You have a special hearing. You hear it. Michael admitted that. He said, and the thing is, this type of technology is not permanent because they can switch it off. Right. They can literally change the signal. They chose not to, and Pert chose not to. And then later on, when I testified in 2006, Michael was the one that suggested I go talk to the magistrate. It wasn't me that wanted to go to court. It was him that wanted to get me in there to testify, to say, oh, she's talking mind control and blah, blah, blah. So Michael could literally lie through his teeth in front of the judge. And of course, that whole thing was orchestrated before I even walked in the room. I had lost the case because he had paid the judge off. Everything was already orchestrated. I had no chance in hell. And guess what? I had an NSA lawyer shadowing that case, ex-NSA Signals Intelligence, who still understands very clearly this whole array system, and told me point blank, if we, he had people that could testify about the technology, how it feels, for $10,000 a pop. And I was like, well, we can't pay these people. I mean, but literally, that's what we're talking about. It's about money, it's about control, it's about power, it's about covert technology, and it's pretty much a rich man's toy, because these type, anybody who has access to this technology, who has the money to buy it, can deploy it. And this is where it becomes a real nightmare for civilians or anybody.
I was just thinking while you're saying that, so what you're saying and what we watched on your DVD and my little bit of research I did earlier this week is, they can remotely send you messages, audio, sounds, images directly into your mind, bypassing your eyeballs and your ears.
Yes, it's neural. Yeah.
And
yes.
It sounds a lot like a bad Vulcan mind meld. You know what I'm saying? Put thoughts in, put their thoughts in your thoughts. And
correct.
But I wonder, could this be used for, let's say you don't know how to do a certain task and they could send you the instructions and all of a sudden you're able to play the piano it's just like the Matrix. No, you're correct. And that's what I was initially, when I was put through this program, first thing they did to me was they tried to break me down with alters and fake names. Excuse me. And they tried to, and this is what's interesting, they kept calling me Selena Taylor. Your birthday's April 22nd. Now, Selena Taylor was a pseudo-daughter that was supposedly taken out in an accident. That girl was plugged into the communication system, I'm pretty sure, 99.9% sure she was. So why they wanted me to be Selena Taylor, first of all, I have no freaking idea, but it was very strange, excusing my French. But I hope that doesn't swear on your radio. I didn't mean to do that. But freaking. But anyways, the concept was to break me down, try to create alters. That didn't work. But the pattern recognition, the numbers, the codes, the signatures they used on me, yes. My body was definitely programmed by some of the technologies. Not in a negative fashion, I would say, but in a very interesting fighter pilot way. I definitely have the capabilities for fighter pilot, and what I would see as the same kind of abilities that Mossbach has and Neil to some degree. Just the things that they were doing were bleeding through into me, and the types of technologies they were using to train and program me. But the thing is, I wasn't complying with being pushed around and muscled around or manhandled by this technology, and that's where I had to draw the line. And I think I'm pretty sure that when people get pulled into these projects, they cave 100%, and they just say, okay, you can do it all to me, I don't care. And I was like, wait a minute, I have a spiritual benchmark. I'm a multidimensional being. I'm a black belt. I mean, I stayed stable in my consciousness so that I wasn't being taken over, because I'll tell you what. That's when how you fought it?
Yeah, because when they start to take you over remotely, they can maneuver your hands. They can do everything. I mean, Michael was doing hand signals with Neil. I mean, these people are capable of remotely hacking an entire body to a point where you become animatronic. And there's even a song that he wrote about this, the whole animation thing. So literally, they animate you. And so then I had to take my power back and say, wait a minute, you guys are not having control over me like this. This is ridiculous. It's a really strange communication system. It's a very strange project. But I do see, they have the mind control. They have the Project Mannequin. They have all these sorts of, in the old days, they used to have these women who were programmed into being whatever, girlfriends, you name it, sci-spy kind of women. So it goes in many directions of MK Ultra, but this is the advanced form of it. But it doesn't work on me. I mean, I'm okay with remote viewing. I'm okay with doing certain things on a technological scale, and I actually like machines. I am very compatible with machines. Mm-hmm. I'm not compatible with interrogation programs, and I'm not compatible with dirty government agencies who want to control and manipulate me.
Well, that's the more you say about that, they can send you. You can, like you say, suddenly you can fly a helicopter. I mean, that was right in that first Matrix movie where they just sort of downloaded that knowledge into her because she's in a matrix. We're all living in this computer and we're programs. We just got to jack that in, and it makes me wonder how much Hollywood knows of people like screenwriters and screenplays know that they're actually just kind of trying to show us without revealing it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And like you say, they're creating I don't know if they're trying to do a Stepford wife thing where they're just you're just serving your time for them, doing all their work they want you to do. Right. It's just weird how there's so many movies and TV shows out there that have all these concepts already in them out there in the open, and they're showing it as science fiction.
Right. Well, if you see the series Dollhouse lately, that one's spot on. Anybody I encourage people to watch Dollhouse because that is the real deal. When they insert false memories, screen memories, they're overlaying, they're using computer technology to interface the brain and actually create these alters and personalities into these women who become hosts for the technology. Also, Blade Runner comes to mind because literally what Mossbach was doing was trying to insert false matrices, false realities. He was literally trying to load me up with false imagery. It's a psychotronic driving system. It's not memory-based. If you take a word and you see a scenario around a word, it's psychotronic driving. It has nothing to do with your real memories. And this is where they can insert fake memories, screen memories, false array system. This also ties into MILABs, military abductions, because most of those people who think they have little ETs wandering around are usually being hit with covert technology, a psychotronic driving system that's neural linking the brain, and they will never know the difference unless they've done the spiritual work or they understand these technologies.
So that's interesting to bring that up at this point because Surlana and I have talked many things dealing with, I guess, have you heard Project Blue Book?
Yes,
Blue
Project,
Beam.
yeah.
Blue Beam.
Oh, Blue Beam, my bad.
Project Blue Beam, but there is a Project Blue Book. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not Blue Book,
Blue
but
Book's old.
It's
Right.
one of those things, just Gene Hackman, Gene Wilder thing with me. And
That's an in-joke.
we'll have to tell you at some point about that. But at any rate, so Project Blue Beam, we're using, I guess, holographic imagery to fool the masses into believing.
Right. Well, the one thing you have to realize, and I'm sure you all do, because you're both very intelligent beings, is that we are in a holographic world. We are holographic beings, and that it's easy to hijack energy. And all they're doing is hijacking transmissions, signals. They can hijack frequencies and then run their own communication system or their array system onto it. So literally, they're overlaying with their own projects. So the Project Blue Beam, I think they call it something else now, but I'm very much convinced that they're hijacking natural energy, natural conscious energy, natural superconscious energy, and actually anything that's descending onto this world to literally create their own version or visualization of whatever you want to see. And also we understand that we as we think, we manifest. So we can manifest realities through consciousness. Well, if they're hijacking your consciousness, then they're going to hijack your reality. Do you see how that's working? Mm-hmm. So this is why we take down the false matrix, so that we can ascend out of this and break down these false barriers, because they're literally screwing mankind up.
What about something like HARP?
HARP is another one. I mean, if you talk to Bijik, is it Nick Bijik, who's communicated a lot about some of the HARP things? I mean, it's an insidious program, although they'll pass it off as something else. But it's still something that's extremely powerful, that's literally capable of affecting people on a health level, on a psychological level, on a mass collective level. So you're dealing with all these what I call dirty transmissions. Mm-hmm. And we really have to be fortified insofar as not paranoid, but aware that there are energies out there that are not productive, but most of them are manufactured by man. And it's all about weaponization of our atmosphere, weaponization of technologies involving our bodies. Now our brains are weaponized through the technology. right? And you can upgrade, like Elysium comes to mind, because you can upgrade people so that they're really, really intelligent. They seem like extraterrestrials, but they're just being hijacked and upgraded by the covert intel. So then there's that group, and then there's the other class of people that are, oh, well, these people are dumbed down by the illusion of mainstream, which is teaching them the wrong information. Do you see how there's a segregation here happening? So the people that are going to have access to this technology are going to be the ones that are upgrading their own, and they're going to let everybody else fall behind deliberately.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. I tell you what, we're about 2 minutes early, but I'm going to go ahead and take the mega break for the top of the hour, and we'll continue this wonderful conversation we're having with Solaris BlueRaven. So don't touch that dial. You're listening to SpaceboyUniverse.com.